Ready to get down to business? Join seasoned entrepreneur, community leader, and Army veteran Scott Shalom Klein, who will take you behind the scenes with those who work in America's small business scene and speak with leaders making an impact, creating jobs, and telling their story in entrepreneurship. So let's get down to business. On AM 560, The Answer, here's your host, Shalom Klein.
And indeed, we are all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship and business. We talk a lot about business here. You're on with Get Down to Business. And I'm your host, Shalom Klein. Remember, you can always download podcasts on my website, syklein.com. Be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and share on your favorite podcast apps. We're going to jump right in and talk about something that I think is really, really important. But we're going to talk with somebody who has a story of passion, innovation, and leadership. And that's Bish Smeir, who is the founder of many interesting companies, the director of Enigmatic Smile and Vow, a blockchain-based platform that aims to decentralize currency issuance. I always love to get to know the person behind the microphone. To start us over here, a visionary entrepreneur, as promised, Bish Smeir. Welcome to the program.
Oh, hi, and very happy to be here. Nice to meet you and get a chance to say hello to your listeners.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Bish, you have been let's just call it an entrepreneur, and that's the most important title that I can use. But you've been at the forefront of the digital currency movement for years. Bish, how did you get interested in this market?
So it's something that's always interested me, and to be honest with you, and I sort of use this story a bit when people ask about it, because it's one of these subjects that either you love it or you hate it, right? But what happened was my father's actually from Jordan in the Middle East, and my mother's Scottish. And one day I went and I sat in Jordan and I started looking into the history of money and how it was all made and where it all comes from. And as I read this subject matter, I got deeply interested in the mechanics of monetary issuance. You work, I work, all of your small businesses, listeners, and everyone around us all work to make money. And the question is what is this money anyway? What is this money we're all working for? So I would say it's been a lot of my life. It's been a driving motivation of mine to understand this function, and then it's crossed over into the life I live every day and the subject matters we're working on and building on as normal businesses with local businesses. I use the word local sometimes instead of small, and large businesses all over the world, to try and run really effective reward programs with them to keep customers coming into their businesses. But on another side, on a deeper level, looking at the function of creating local currencies and stimulating economic growth in communities and for small businesses themselves.
Absolutely. Again, chatting with Bish Smeir. And Bish, I mean, I love the way you just framed that. I mean, first of all, your background's fascinating, and that's great. And asking some really tough questions. We take advantage. We take for granted that we've got cash in our pocket, although most of us don't have cash in our pockets anymore. We've got all sorts of different things that relate to currency. You've been asking the hard questions, and one of the things that you talk about all the time is changing the world one transaction at a time. So you've been really involved in this topic of decentralizing currency issuance. Let's talk about some of these areas: blockchain, fintech. These are fascinating areas that I have to say I certainly don't understand, and I don't want to discount our listeners, but I know many of our listeners need this to be demystified. So let's talk about some of the things that you've learned over these past many years of being involved in this industry.
No problem. I definitely will do that. And I know we've got limited time, so I can express myself very quickly, and hopefully everything still flows and makes sense. But if I look at this as a subject matter as a whole, money itself, or the thing we use every day, that on the front of it, certainly in your country, it says, "In God we trust." I mean, this unit of value that we circulate amongst ourselves, we as a human race, as a species, have given the right of the creation of that currency to essentially an organization in every country. Call them central banks, the Fed, whoever we want to call that, that runs that function. And all of our businesses, all of our industries, everything that happens flows on that on that currency and exists because of that currency and supply that is controlled in its issuance by a centralized party. So if we think about what that means that that centralized party can pull back that currency out of supply and we don't have enough, and they can push currency and supply and then there's too much. And of course, you know that $4 trillion just got printed out of thin air recently in America, and it's going to be a lot more than that over the next few years. And the effect of that is there's so much money in circulation that for all of us, the value of our money is less and less and less, as is the case of reality. All of us, or a lot of people, have kids. I've got three of them, and if I had 10 Smarties and put them on the table, and I divvied out the three Smarties each to three of my kids, and there was one Smartie left, those kids would kill for that last Smartie. Like, that's crazy. But if I put 100 Smarties or 200 Smarties on the table, it becomes less valuable to all the people who exist. So we've given this function away to people, and then that $4 trillion gets printed and used for what? Does it get used to improve Chicago? Does it get used to help the people in Hawaii, or does it go abroad to help other countries and interfere in everything else that's going on? I don't need to get too political, but essentially the idea of giving any company, private company, person, individual, organization, the ability to print money removes from the business community and all the people that are around some of the biggest levers that we could have to tackle inequality, social injustices, everything that's there. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have any money, what are you prepared to do to get money? And that's horrible, that human nature is determined by how much money is, or the availability of money and supply. So blockchain comes out of this as an idea that the monetary supply, I mean, certainly Bitcoin, was an idea that the monetary supply would be fixed. There are only 21 million Bitcoins ever that can ever be produced ever. There can never be any more. So if I've got a Bitcoin and I know there can never be more Bitcoins than 21 million of them, and I know that there's more and more fiat money being printed up everywhere, then I'm sitting on my Bitcoin looking out into all the people holding fiat money and thinking, you guys are crazy. What are you doing with your fiat money? You're losing value, and I've got one of 21 million. And so I'm looking out at the world and thinking, you're crazy. But then there's a whole bundle of other people sitting on fiat money going, hey, this Bitcoin stuff's too risky. It goes up and down in value and it looks too risky in the grand scheme of things. And so it's two different perspectives. But when you really try and come down to its core, if there's only 21 million of things or any fixed supply value asset, and everything else is being inflated all over the place, then in my world, it's safer to stay with the Bitcoin stuff. And in other people's worlds, it's safer to stay with the fiat stuff. We know the positives and benefits of both, or some people do, and some people are not aware of that. So we decided we would play in that world as well, and get involved in the blockchain world and get involved in understanding it because of this core principle, just because of that a clear core principle in the middle. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I'm chatting with Bish Smeir, the director of Enigmatic Smile, and Vow. Vow is a blockchain-based platform that aims to decentralize currency issuance. And Bish, really appreciate you sort of diving in. Clearly, you're the thought leader in fintech, which is so important. I want to spend our remaining minute talking about how Enigmatic Smile is transforming loyalty programs. All of our listeners can search your name. This is something that you are heavily associated with. You've got a very collaborative approach and a very partnership-based approach. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the one problem that I have with all of the blockchain world is that it's not tied to anything real. So just having 21 million units of something, if they're rotten bananas, doesn't help anyone. So there needs to be something else. And the thing that's missing from the blockchain industry as a whole is utility. And that's something that we address within our businesses by actually one of the very few blockchain projects where there's actual real utility. And the reason there's real utility is we give all small businesses the ability to create the money supply. So it's the small businesses that get the ability to create the money supply, instead of the large dominant forces in the world. And if you give 100 small businesses in Chicago the ability to create a monetary supply, and you put some rules around it, you can suddenly create a local currency circulating in Chicago, which goes on to
Hmm.
benefit many people in that community. So Enigmatic Smiles creates programs which make it easy for small businesses and large businesses to
Hmm.
interact on this level and do some interesting things. And as I said, you can check out the website enigmaticsmile.com, like the Mona Lisa, or Vow Currency, which is a promise of issuance and acceptance of the same unit of value, and see if it floats your boat.
Well, you cut right to the chase on that one. Definitely check out Enigmatic Smile and Vow. Really, really amazing stuff. And Bish, I can't thank you enough for coming on and demystifying these topics. And I could talk to you for hours, my friend, and perhaps we'll do that again in a different format. But again, Bish Smeir, thanks so much for joining us. We've got to cut to a quick break, but when we come back, we've got a lot more small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship coming up. So don't touch that dial. You're listening to Get Down to Business.